Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I am back with a new video for a new award show. And this award show is probably one you have never heard about before, but it has been around for quite a long time. I'm talking about the Saturn Awards, the 42nd Saturn Awards to be specific. Now, what are the Saturn Awards? Well, the Saturn Awards are an award show designed to honor television and film for genres that aren't traditionally big players at award shows like the Oscars and the Emmys. And these genres include science fiction, horror, fantasy, action, thriller, etc. Now, the Oscars and Emmys have honored films and TV shows of those genres in the past, but it doesn't happen quite a lot of the time. Sometimes it's because these genres don't produce the kind of films and TV shows that meet the standard that the Oscars and the Emmys usually look for, and also because sometimes other genres like drama, history, often catch Oscar or Emmy voters' attentions more than the genres that the Saturn Awards honor. But the Saturn Awards have been going on for a very long time. They were originally founded in 1972, and although they've had a few years where they either combined 2 years worth of movies into one ceremony or didn't have a ceremony at all, they've nevertheless, throughout most of their existence, been having an annual awards ceremony every year to honor movies and TV shows in science fiction, fantasy, horror, action, etc. And this year marks the 42nd annual Saturn Awards, like I said earlier. If you've never heard of the Saturn Awards, then the reason why you've probably never heard of them is because throughout their entire history, the Saturn Awards have never been broadcast on television. Never. And as of right now, I don't believe there are any plans in the near future to broadcast the ceremony on television, although I think it would be awesome if they did. I don't know if they do live streaming of the ceremony on YouTube. They do have a YouTube channel, but I think they only launched their YouTube channel just this year. So I don't know if any footage of the ceremony will ever be made available. It usually has not been in the past, and usually the winners are never revealed for the Saturn Awards until after the ceremony is over, and they release the list of the winners on their website. I always like to take a look at the Saturn Awards every year because I like to see what kinds of films and TV shows will they honor that were honored at the Oscars and the Emmys, and what kinds of films and TV shows they will honor that were not honored at the Oscars and the Emmys. And like every award show, there's always a list of good and bad within the nominations themselves, and there are also snubs in terms of who should have been nominated but didn't make the cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read all the categories for the Saturn Award nominations. There's 3 types of categories: DVD nominations, those are the shortest, television nominations, and film nominations. The actual Saturn Awards ceremony will be taking place this Wednesday, June 22nd, and hopefully I will have a video of the actual winners up sometime in the next week once I finish my list of videos that I still have to finish and edit about other winners of other award ceremonies. And here are the official nominees for the 42nd Annual Saturn Awards. Starting off with DVD nominations. Best DVD or Blu-ray Release: Big Game, Burying the X, The Cobbler, Monsters: The Dark Continent, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, Wolf Totem. Best DVD or Blu-ray Television Release: Black Sails Season 2, From Dusk Till Dawn Season 2, Hannibal Season 3, Lost in Space: The Complete Adventures, My Favorite Martian: The Complete Series, The X-Files: The Collector's Set. Best DVD or Blu-ray Special Edition Release: Furious 7 Extended Edition, The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies Extended Edition, Society Limited Edition, Vanilla Sky Alternate Ending, X-Men: Days of Future Past The Rogue Cut. Best DVD or Blu-ray Classic Film Release: Burnt Offerings, Cemetery Without Crosses, Lady Hawk, Miracle Mile, The Monster That Challenged the World, Tales of Terror, X, the Man with the X-Ray Eyes. Best DVD or Blu-ray Collection, Frank Darabont Collection, Horror Classics Volume 1, Jurassic Park Collection, Mad Max Anthology, Nikatsu Diamond Guys Volume 1, Special Effects Collection. And now for the television nominations. Best Young Actor or Actress on Television, Max Charles, The Strain, Frank Delane, Fear the Walking Dead, Jodelle Ferland, Dark Matter, Brennick O'Connor, Game of Thrones, Chandler Riggs, The Walking Dead, Dylan Sprayberry, Teen Wolf, Maisie Williams, Game of Thrones. Best Supporting Actor on Television, Richard Armitage, Hannibal, Vincent D'Onofrio, Daredevil, Kit Harington, Game of Thrones, Toby Jones, Wayward Pines, Eric Knudsen, Continuum, Lance Reddick, Bosch, David Tennant, Jessica Jones, Patrick Wilson, Fargo. Best Supporting Actress on Television, Gillian Anderson, Hannibal, Tova Feldshuh, The Walking Dead, Callista Flockhart, Supergirl, Danai Gurira, The Walking Dead, Lena Headey, Game of Thrones, Melissa Leo, Wayward Pines, Melissa McBride, The Walking Dead. Best Actor on Television, Bruce Campbell, Ash vs. Evil Dead, Charlie Cox, Daredevil, Matt Dillon, Wayward Pines, David Duchovny, The X-Files, Grant Gustin, The Flash, Sam Heughan, Outlander, Andrew Lincoln, The Walking Dead, Mads Mikkelsen, Hannibal. Best Actress on Television, Gillian Anderson, The X-Files, Katrina Balfe, Outlander, Melissa Benoist, Supergirl, Kim Dickens, Fear the Walking Dead, Rachel Nichols, Continuum, Kristen Ritter, Jessica Jones, Rebecca Romaine, The Librarians. Best Guest Performer on Television, Laura Benanti, Supergirl, Stephen Brand, Teen Wolf, Victor Garber, The Flash, Scott Glenn, Daredevil, Alex Kingston, Doctor Who, The Husbands of River Song, John Carroll Lynch, The Walking Dead, William Shatner, Haven. Best Presentation on Television. This basically means best TV movie or miniseries. The Cannibal in the Jungle, Childhood's End, Doctor Who, The Husbands of River Song, Jim Henson's Turkey Hollow, Sharknado 3, Oh Hell No, The Wiz Live. Best New Media Television Series. This basically means best TV show on a streaming service like Netflix, Amazon, Crackle, etc. Bosch, Daredevil, DreamWorks Dragons, Jessica Jones, The Man in the High Castle, Powers, Sense8. Best Superhero Television Series, Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Arrow, The Flash, Gotham, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl. Best Action or Thriller Television Series, Bates Motel, Blind Spot, Fargo, Hannibal, The Last Ship, The Librarians, Mr. Robot. Best Fantasy Television Series, Game of Thrones, Haven, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, The Magicians, The Muppets, Outlander, The Shannara Chronicles. Best Horror Television Series, American Horror Story Hotel, Ash vs. Evil Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, Salem, The Strain, Teen Wolf, The Walking Dead. Best Science Fiction Television Series, Colony, Continuum, Doctor Who, The Expanse, The 100, Wayward Pines, The X-Files. And now onto the film nominations. Best Costume Design: Alexandra Byrne, Avengers Age of Ultron; Rama Rajamouli and Prashanti Tipiraneni, Bahubali The Beginning; Sandy Powell, Cinderella; Kate Hawley, Crimson Peak; Ariane Phillips, Kingsman: The Secret Service; Michael Kaplan, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens. Best Film Editing: Dan Lebenthal and Colby Parker Jr., Ant-Man; Lee Folsom Bird, Dylan Highsmith, Kirk Morey, and Christian Wagner, Furious 7; Kevin Stitt, Jurassic World; Eddie Hamilton and John Harris, Kingsman: The Secret Service; Margaret Sixel, Mad Max Fury Road; Marianne Brandon and Mary Jo Markey, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens. Best Makeup: Joel Harlow and Kenny Niederbaumer, Black Mass; David Marty, Montse Ribe, and Xavi Bastida, Crimson Peak; Gregory Nicotero, Howard Berger, Jake Garber, and Heba Thorstadter, The Hateful Eight; Leslie Vanderwalt, Damian Martin, and Elka Wardega, Mad Max Fury Road; Donald Mowat, Sicario; Neil Scanlon, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens. Best Music: M.M. Keeravani, Bahubali The Beginning; Fernando Velazquez, Crimson Peak; Ennio Morricone, The Hateful Eight; Tom Holkenborg, Mad Max Fury Road; Johan Johansson, Sicario; John Williams, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens. Best Production Design: Sabu Cyril, Bahubali The Beginning; Thomas E. Sanders, Crimson Peak; Ed Verreau, Jurassic World; Colin Gibson, Mad Max Fury Road; Rick Carter and Darren Gilford, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens; Scott Chambliss, Tomorrowland. Best Special Effects: Paul Corbould, Chris Townsend, Ben Snow, and Paul Butterworth, Avengers Age of Ultron; Andrew Whitehurst, Paul Norris, Mark Ardington, and Sarah Bennett, Ex Machina; John Rosengrant, Michael Lantieri, and Tim Alexander, Jurassic World; Andrew Jackson, Tom Wood, Dan Oliver, and Andy Williams, Mad Max Fury Road; Richard Stammers, Anders Langlands, Chris Lawrence, and Stephen Warner, The Martian; Roger Guyatt, Patrick Tubach, Neil Scanlon, and Chris Corbould, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens. Best Writing: Guillermo del Toro and Matthew Robbins, Crimson Peak; Alex Garland, Ex Machina; Rick Jaffa, Amanda Silver, Colin Trevorrow, and Derek Connolly, Jurassic World; Jane Goldman and Matthew Vaughn, Kingsman: The Secret Service; George Miller, Brendan McCarthy, and Nick Lathouris, Mad Max Fury Road; Drew Goddard, The Martian; Lawrence Kasdan, J.J. Abrams, and Michael Arndt, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens. Best Young Actor or Actress: Olivia DeJonge, The Visit; James Friedson Jackson, Cop Car; Milo Parker, Mr. Holmes; Elias Schwartz and Lucas Schwartz, Goodnight Mommy; Ty Simpkins, Jurassic World; Jacob Tremblay, Room. Best Supporting Actor: Paul Bettany, Avengers Age of Ultron; Michael Douglas, Ant-Man; Adam Driver, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens; Walton Goggins, The Hateful Eight; Simon Pegg, Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation; Michael Shannon, 99 Homes. Best Supporting Actress: Jessica Chastain, Crimson Peak; Carrie Fisher, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens; Evangeline Lilly, Ant-Man; Lupita Nyong'o, Star Wars Episode VII: The Force Awakens; Tamana, Bahubali the Beginning. Alicia Vikander, Ex Machina. Best Actor: John Boyega, Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. Matt Damon, The Martian. Leonardo DiCaprio, The Revenant. Taron Egerton, Kingsman: The Secret Service. Harrison Ford, Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. Domhnall Gleeson, Ex Machina. Samuel L. Jackson, The Hateful Eight. Paul Rudd, Ant-Man. Best Actress: Emily Blunt, Sicario. Jessica Chastain, The Martian. Blake Lively, The Age of Adeline. Daisy Ridley, Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. Charlize Theron, Mad Max Fury Road. Mia Wasikowska, Crimson Peak. Best Director: Peyton Reed, Ant-Man. Guillermo del Toro, Crimson Peak. Alex Garland, Ex Machina. Colin Trevorrow, Jurassic World. George Miller, Mad Max Fury Road. Ridley Scott, The Martian. J.J. Abrams, Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. Best Animated Film: Anomalisa, The Good Dinosaur. Inside Out. Kung Fu Panda 3. Minions, When Marnie Was There. Best International Film. Now, this is not necessarily foreign language films alone. This can mean any film that's produced outside the United States, whether it's in English or a foreign language. Goodnight Mommy, Labyrinth of Lies, Legend, The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared, Turbo Kid, The Wave. Best Independent Film: Bone Tomahawk, Cop Car, Experimenter, 99 Homes, Room, Trumbo. Best Comic Book Film: Ant-Man, Attack on Titan Part 1, Avengers: Age of Ultron, Kingsman: The Secret Service, The Peanuts Movie. Best Action or Adventure Film: Everest, Furious 7, Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation, The Revenant, Spectre, Spy. Best Fantasy Film: The Age of Adeline, Bahubali the Beginning, Cinderella, Goosebumps, The Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 2, Ted 2. Best Horror Film: Crimson Peak, Insidious Chapter 3, It Follows, Krampus, The Visit, What We Do in the Shadows. Best Thriller Film: Black Mass, Bridge of Spies, The Gift, The Hateful Eight, Mr. Holmes, Sicario. And finally, Best Science Fiction Film: Ex Machina, Jurassic World, Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens, Terminator Genesis. Alright, now time to talk about the nominations. For all the DVD categories, I'm not going to comment on those because some of these films I've honestly never even heard of, like in the Best Classic Film Release. Like, I've never heard of Burnt Offerings or Cemetery Without Crosses or The Monster That Challenged the World. And a lot of these TV shows are TV shows I have never watched. I've never watched Black Sails or Hannibal or Lost in Space or any of those shows. And as for like Best DVD or Blu-ray release, general release, I have seen The Cobbler, which, as you all know, I put on my top 10 worst films of 2015 at number 3 because that movie bored me to death. But I've never seen Big Game or Burying the X or The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. I've heard a lot of great things about The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. I've seen like pictures of it, and it looks like a very, very beautiful animated film. It was even nominated at the Oscars for Best Animated Feature, although there was a bit of controversy because some people felt that that movie stole away the spot that many thought would have been reserved for the Lego Movie that year. Because many thought the Lego Movie would win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, but it wasn't even nominated. It got nominated for Original Song, but that's a different category. And as for all the television categories, I'm familiar with most of these shows. I've seen reports about casting and episode recaps on all these various entertainment news websites, but I haven't really watched any of them. There's so much on TV these days, I literally can't watch it all. So as a result, I'm not really going to comment on the good and bad of these nominations because I'm not fully qualified to do that, not having seen all these shows. I recognize a lot of the actors being nominated. I guess the only thing that really surprises me is that there's no nomination for Peter Dinklage for Game of Thrones. There's a lot of nominations for several of the other cast members, but not him, because Game of Thrones, I know most of the characters on Game of Thrones have big fan bases, but Peter Dinklage has always seemed to be the most popular cast member on the show. So, but of course, it's not like Peter Dinklage is shortchanged from Game of Thrones because he's won 2 Emmys and a Golden Globe for playing Tyrion Lannister. Although I will say, even though I have not seen any of the Sharknado movies, I'm honestly surprised that Sharknado 3, Oh Hell No, was nominated for Best Presentation on Television. Because Sharknado is just one of those franchises where the creators have always known that it's really, really bad and really, really ludicrous, but yet they do it anyway, and people love the Sharknado movies for how bad they are, I guess. But as for the film nominations, I have seen a lot of the films nominated here, so I will go through all the categories and tell you what I like and don't like about them. For Best Costume Design, this looks very good. Cinderella had excellent costumes. Crimson Peak had excellent costumes. Kingsman: The Secret Service, unlike Cinderella and Crimson Peak, Kingsman is set in the present day instead of in the past, but I will admit, even though I don't really like wearing suits, I honestly was a little bit envious of the suits that Colin Firth and Taron Egerton wore in that movie. And then Star Wars, of course, brought back a lot of its iconic costumes and gave them a new look, since this is set 30 years later after the events of Return of the Jedi. I will say, though, I'm very shocked that they did not nominate Mad Max Fury Road, which won the Oscar for Best Costume Design. And that was a special occasion in of itself, because the Best Costume Design Oscar usually goes to a period piece film like Cinderella or Crimson Peak. Very rarely does it go to a film set in a future post-apocalyptic era like Mad Max Fury Road. The Revenant, I'm also surprised The Revenant isn't nominated here, because that too had some very good period costumes that were Oscar nominated, which weren't necessarily of the beautiful and glamorous kind that usually dominate that category. But those snubs aren't as bad as some others in later categories, which we'll eventually get to. Best Film Editing, this list looks very good for the most part, although I am genuinely shocked that they did not nominate The Martian. The Martian's editing has gotten almost no nominations throughout awards season, which is very disappointing for me, because The Martian, of course, was my #1 best film of 2015. That movie was about 140 minutes long, and not once did I feel bored during that movie. Of course, there are many elements that help with that, such as the great acting, the great writing, and the great directing, but none of those can work effectively if there is not great editing, because ultimately it is up to the editor to boil down hours and hours and hours worth of footage, because anyone who works in a movie will tell you that every scene is always filmed numerous times and then edited together based on the best elements from each of the takes. and ultimately it's what the director and the editor determine are the best scenes that make up the final product that we see in theaters or on DVD. And The Martian just received rave reviews from critics and audiences across the board, and it got a lot of nominations in well-deserved categories like Matt Damon's performance, the screenplay, Ridley Scott's direction, although not at the Oscars, surprisingly, which was a big shock there. But very rarely did it get nominated for its editing by Pietro Scalia, who has won 2 Oscars for editing in the past. I don't know how many Saturns he's won or if he's ever been nominated for any, but just the fact that The Martian was such a well put together film, I really feel like it should have been recognized in this category here. And also shockingly, the Saturn Awards don't have a cinematography category. I honestly don't know why. You would think that if they nominate all other categories, they would have cinematography, but for some odd reason they don't. And The Martian, Mad Max Fury Road, The Revenant, there were a ton of films this year. There were a ton of films in 2015 that had great cinematography. And if the Oscars and the Emmys can recognize cinematography, I don't know why the Saturn Awards can't. Maybe in the future they'll create it, but for now, I don't know. Best Makeup. Now, unlike the Oscars, which only had 3 makeup nominations, I don't know why they don't just expand it to 5. The Saturn Awards have, as they do with all the other categories, 6 nominations for makeup. And if any of you were upset about Black Mass not getting an Oscar nomination for Best Makeup, well, you can rest assured here that the Saturn Awards did not forget the makeup artists who transformed Johnny Depp into James Whitey Bulger, one of the most fearsome gangsters in American history. And all these other nominees look great as well, but shockingly they don't have The Revenant nominated. And of course in The Revenant they had to make Leonardo DiCaprio look like he was mauled half to death by a bear. For Best Music, these choices look very good. Got a lot of the Oscar contenders back here, such as The Hateful Eight, Sicario, and Star Wars. Although surprisingly, they don't have Bridge of Spies, which was nominated at the Oscars and has a nomination later on, because that had an excellent score. But I haven't heard the musical score for Bahubali: The Beginning. That was a film that came out from India last year and actually did pretty well at the box office for an Indian film, even managing to crack into the top 10, but not at number 1, more at like number 9 or 10. But still, for a film like that, that's very impressive. And obviously the Saturn Awards liked it a lot because that film is nominated in several categories. Best Production Design, very excellent list of nominees. You got your period pieces like Crimson Peak to your futuristic pieces like Tomorrowland. I have no complaints about that category. For Best Special Effects, no complaints at all about this category. Very similar to the Oscar lineup. The only nominee from the Oscars that's not here is The Revenant, but I can't see anybody finding an excuse to take Avengers: Age of Ultron or Jurassic World out of the picture to replace it with The Revenant. I mean, you probably could if you wanted to, but I'm sure even the haters of any of these films will admit that the special effects are good in them. Best Writing. These are a lot of good nominations, especially with Ex Machina and The Martian, and Kingsman: The Secret Service. But there's definitely a few films I feel could have been included in here. I'm very, very shocked there's no nomination for Quentin Tarantino for The Hateful Eight. Because Quentin Tarantino, his films would literally not be his films, not only because of his directing, but also his writing. Quentin Tarantino has a very unique writing style that's instantly recognizable, and he's won countless awards for his writing. Of course, he sadly didn't get an Oscar nomination this year because the Best Original Screenplay field at the Oscars was really, really good and really, really crowded, and I honestly don't know which film you would have taken out to replace with The Hateful Eight. But here at the Saturn Awards, there's no there's only one writing category, not two. I haven't seen Jurassic World, but I don't know. I'm not exactly sure if its writing is more award-worthy than Quentin Tarantino's. Um, Inside Out could have been nominated here as well because that screenplay was absolutely fantastic. Room could have been nominated here. That had a fantastic screenplay, and the screenplay for Room was actually written by the author of the original novel. So when you have the original novelist writing the film's screenplay, there's always going to be a lot of high expectations, and Emma Donoghue, she did a brilliant job. Bridge of Spies could have been nominated here. Matt Charnon and the Coen brothers, yes, the same Coen brothers who directed Fargo and The Big Lebowski, their screenplay for Bridge of Spies, which did not feature the typical quirky Coen brother mannerisms, was an excellent screenplay, because when you work with Steven Spielberg, he expects nothing but the best from both his cast and his crew. And Bridge of Spies is just one of many great films in Steven Spielberg's resume. But despite the lack of nominations for those films, I'm just really, really glad that they did not forget The Martian, because The Martian, in my opinion, was easily the best screenplay of 2015, and I honestly believe it's one of the best science fiction screenplays of all time. I really do. Because here you have a film that is not afraid to embrace its scientific roots, but it still manages to draw in a wide audience. Best Young Actor or Actress looks like a pretty solid list. I know some people might be upset about Olivia de Jong being nominated for The Visit, because among my group of friends on Facebook, those of us who talk about movies, we've been very divided on The Visit. Some people thought it was absolute garbage and one of the worst horror movies they'd ever seen, while others, like myself, felt it was a nice comeback for M. Night Shyamalan after he had pretty much flushed his career down the toilet over the last 10 years with Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender, and After Earth. But I really like The Visit. Were there some predictable parts? Yes. Do some of the twists seem generic after having watched the film? Yes. But is there a lot of tension in the film? Oh, yes. Were the performances good? Yes. And were the writing and directing good? Considering what M. Night Shyamalan has done in the past? Yes. And I did not see Cop Car, Mr. Holmes, although I heard very great things about them. Goodnight Mommy I did not see. I heard that was a really good horror movie. That was actually Austria's entry for consideration for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars, but sadly it did not get nominated, although even if it did, I don't think it would have won against Son of Saul, which was like the front runner from the get-go. Jurassic World, like I said, I haven't seen, although many of you might remember Ty Simpkins as the kid from Iron Man 3. That's what he did before he did Jurassic World. Although he's been in a lot of other movies and TV shows, because I think he started acting when he was just like a baby or something. And then Jacob Tremblay in Room. I think hands down he will easily win, because Jacob Tremblay in Room gave what I think is one of the best child actor performances of this decade. There were many who wanted him to get an Oscar nomination, and if he had gotten an Oscar nomination, I would have had no problem with that, because he truly is talented beyond his years. He really is. You know, he's got several more movies coming out this year, and I just hope he's around for a long time to come. I don't know, of course, whether he'll continue acting later on in his life. I certainly hope he does, but however long of an actor he is, I just hope nothing but the best for him. One performer that I'm saddened to not see on here, though, is Rafe Cassidy for Tomorrowland. She played the little robot girl Athena, who comes looking for both George Clooney and Britt Robertson so that they can help her save the titular Tomorrowland in the film. I thought her performance was really, really good. I thought she held her own against all the actors in the movie, especially seasoned pros like George Clooney and Hugh Laurie. And I know Tomorrowland split a lot of people down the middle. Some really liked it, some really hated it. But I think one element that both sides could agree on was Raffi Cassidy's performance as Athena being great. Right. But for Best Supporting Actor, this looks like a very solid list. Very happy for Adam Driver and Walton Goggins, and especially Michael Shannon. I honestly thought Michael Shannon would have been a better choice for the Oscars for Best Supporting Actor than Tom Hardy for The Revenant. Tom Hardy was really good in The Revenant, but Michael Shannon in 99 Homes was just stupendous. But the Best Supporting Actor of 2015, and he won the Oscar for it, is not in here, and that's Mark Rylance for Bridge of Spies. Mark Rylance in Bridge of Spies was just phenomenal. I mean, he even stole the show from Tom Hanks. And when you steal the show from one of the most recognizable actors in the world, that's an accomplishment to behold. And Mark Rylance is no random award winner. Fans of his theater work will know very well that he won 3 Tony Awards for his work on Broadway. He'd done a few films here and there, but arguably he'd never really achieved any stardom in the film world until starring in Bridge of Spies. And thanks to his great performance in winning the Oscar, Mark Rylance is now going to be in several films like the upcoming BFG, the Christopher Nolan World War II movie Dunkirk, 2 more Steven Spielberg movies, the science fiction film Ready Player One, and the historical drama The Kidnapping of Edgardo Mortara. I believe that's how that name is pronounced. So I'm just very... While it's very disappointing that he's not on here, this year I have a strong feeling we will see Mark Rylance nominated for a Saturn Award in the future, whether it be for the BFG or Dunkirk or anything else. I'm sure his nomination is going to come someday. I wish it had come this year, but you can't have everything, I guess. And also, I can't believe I almost forgot these two. I'm very, very shocked that there's no nomination for either Colin Firth or Mark Strong or Samuel L. Jackson for Kingsman: The Secret Service, because those 3 actors in that film were each incredible in their own way. I guess maybe the Saturn voters were split on who they think deserved it more, and as a result, no gentleman got enough votes to get nominated, but I wish at least one of them had made the cut. For Best Supporting Actress, this looks like a very good list for the most part. If there are any who I felt could have been included in here, I would have liked to have seen maybe Cate Blanchett for Cinderella, or Julianne Moore for The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. Because Julianne Moore in that movie perfectly brought to life the character of President Coin. For Best Actor, this is one of their biggest lists because they have 8 nominees here instead of 6, so there must have been a tie in the voting. Well, actually, I know in the case of John Boyega, he was originally nominated in Supporting Actor, but once fans pointed out that he was clearly the lead, the Saturn Awards rectified the error and switched him to Lead Actor. I honestly can't think of any snubs in this category at all, so well done Saturn Awards for a very good category here. For Best Actress, though, there's some very glaring omissions. Now, I haven't seen Blake Lively's performance in The Age of Adeline, but I honestly don't know if it's more worthy of a nomination than, say, Jennifer Lawrence for The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, Lily James for Cinderella, or Brie Larson for Room. Jennifer Lawrence, she's been nominated for the first 3 Hunger Games movies in this category, and even those who hate The Hunger Games have always admitted that her performance is the one saving grace. I love all the Hunger Games movies, so for me, it's very sad for that reason to not see her here. Well, not just sad, in fact, it's insulting in my opinion, because Jennifer Lawrence has embodied the role of Katniss so much that literally no one else can imagine another actress in that role besides her. And if you look at the list of actresses who auditioned for the role of Katniss before Jennifer Lawrence was cast, it's quite amazing. I believe Shailene Woodley auditioned for that role, Chloe Grace Moretz auditioned for that role, Haley Steinfeld auditioned for that role, and I believe Abigail Breslin auditioned for that role. So pretty much every young actress in Hollywood who's currently in their early 20s or late teens all auditioned for Katniss Everdeen before Jennifer Lawrence ultimately got the part. And of course, I think Jennifer Lawrence has beautifully brought the character to life from Suzanne Collins' novels. I mean, I can reread the novels and literally imagine Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss when she moves or she talks or does anything. So it's just very sad that she's not nominated here. Lily James, of course, beautifully brought Cinderella back to life. Many actresses have played Cinderella in various incarnations, either on screen or on stage. Of course, Eileen Woods voiced Cinderella in the 1950 original film, and then there were the Rodgers and Hammerstein's TV musical adaptations with stars like Julie Andrews, Leslie Ann Warren, and Brandy Norwood. But Lily James, I thought, was a wonderful Cinderella, and that she made all of the past Cinderellas, especially Eileen Woods, very proud. And with Brie Larson in Room, she not only gave one of the most heartbreaking and compelling performances of 2015, but she also won the Oscar for Best Actress. And of course, Room was nominated in other categories like Best Independent Film and Best Young Actor or Actress for Jacob Tremblay. And anyone who's seen Room will tell you that both Brie Larson and Jacob Tremblay's performances are best when they're working off of each other, because 90% of the film, the two of them are reacting to each other in their performances. So for Jacob Tremblay to get recognized and Brie Larson to not get recognized, that comes across as unfair to me. Maybe Brie Larson came in just a few votes shy of getting a nomination, but still it's sad that she's not on here. Best Director, this looks like a very, very solid lineup. Although I'm surprised there's no Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu for The Revenant or Quentin Tarantino for The Hateful Eight, but based on this lineup, it's kind of hard to argue who you'd take out and replace with those two. Best Animated Film, this is a very good list. Some people might be surprised that the Peanuts movie is not on here, but as I explained in the nominations, it's nominated for Best Comic Book Film. Minions, I guess I can see why it's nominated. It was an okay movie, but certainly was nowhere near as good as Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, or Anomalisa. Minions, I'd give like a 6 out of 10. Best International Film, this list looks pretty good, even though I have not seen any of the films nominated on here. They did nominate, I noticed, The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared. The film, I believe, is from Sweden. It's a foreign film, and that's the film that was nominated for the Oscar for Best Makeup, and many people believe stole the spot that everyone thought would be reserved for Black Mass. But it did have to transform a 50-year-old actor into a 100-year-old character, so that's probably why it got nominated there at the Oscars. Best Independent Film. I've seen half the films on this list, 99 Homes, Room, and Trumbo. All very good. 99 Homes and Trumbo were in my honorable mentions for Best of 2015. Room was at my number 4. I haven't seen Bone Tomahawk, Cop Car, or Experimenter, but I've heard they're all really good. For Best Comic Book Film, I like how they're honoring not just superhero movies. You certainly have them, like Ant-Man and Avengers Age of Ultron, but you also have Attack on Titan, which I have not seen, but it's based off a manga, a Japanese anime comic book. Of course, Kingsman: The Secret Service, that's based on Mark Millar comic book. Mark Millar's also the guy who created the Kick-Ass comic books, although I'm not really a Kick-Ass fan, but that's a topic for another day. And then the Peanuts movie is, of course, based off the iconic Peanuts comic strip by Charles Schulz, which ran for nearly 50 years until Charles Schulz died. And of course, the Peanuts franchise has many, many beloved characters like Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Linus, Lucy, Sally, Franklin, Pigpen, Peppermint Patty, Marcy, and all of them were wonderfully represented in this movie. Like, this was the perfect movie that could not only please old fans of the Peanuts comics, but also win over several new fans in the process. Best Action Adventure Film. This looks like a very good list. I haven't seen every movie on it, but just from what I have seen and from what other people have said about the films I have not seen, I can't find anything to complain about. Best Fantasy Film. There's some things that come across as a little fishy to me. The Hunger Games franchise has usually been nominated as a science fiction film at the Saturn Awards. So I don't know why the hell it's being nominated as a fantasy film. Yeah, it's set in a future dystopian society, but nothing about that society comes across as fantasy. Like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, that's fantasy. The Hunger Games is science fiction. But, I mean, I'm glad it got some kind of recognition, but I just feel it's in the wrong category. And while I have not seen Ted 2, or the first Ted for that matter, I know that many people felt it was kind of a disappointment compared to the original. I know some of the die-hard Ted fans felt the sequel was just as good as the original, and there was even one film critic, Lights Camera Jackson, who said Ted 2 was among the top 5 funniest films of all time, although even fans of Ted 2 have said, no way is that true. But I don't know how a film about a talking teddy bear can count as a fantasy, especially when it's technically set in the present world of today. I mean, call me crazy, but I don't think a talking teddy bear is enough to make a film a fantasy, especially if it's billed as a comedy and it's set in the present day and everything else about the film looks normal in terms of setting. For Best Horror Film, this looks like a pretty solid list because pretty much all of the films on this list got pretty positive reviews for the most part, and horror films these days are hit and miss. There are many that are made cheaply so that they can be box office successes no matter what, and those films are almost always hated by critics. But then every once in a while you get a horror film that is a true gem that uses real scares and real thrills and doesn't just go for the cheap things. For Best Thriller Film, this is a very solid list. The only one I haven't seen is Mr. Holmes, although I heard that was really, really good and that Ian McKellen was a fantastic Sherlock Holmes. But everything else was absolutely phenomenal. Especially Bridge of Spies, which was in my top 10, which was my number 8 best film of 2015. Black Mass, which was a great comeback for Johnny Depp last year, although it looks like that was only a one-time thing because Alice Through the Looking Glass has been both a critical and box office bomb, and of course Johnny Depp is under a lot of scrutiny right now about his personal life due to his divorce from Amber Heard, and she of course is alleging that Johnny Depp was physically abusive to her, and this has been one of those classic he said, she said divorces. The Gift was a really great film. I thought that film was going to suck because its trailer was absolutely terrible. But then once I watched it, I was amazed at just how good it was. And the ending. This film had one of the most shocking endings I have ever seen. I'm not going to say what it is because to spoil this film's ending is like the worst kind of spoiler you can give out imaginable. But if you want to see a film that will leave you going, holy crap, what did I just watch? But in a good way, then please, please check out The Gift. I guarantee you will not be bored by watching it. And then finally for Best Science Fiction Film, this is a very good list for the most part, although I'm very skeptical about Terminator Genisys. Now, I did not see Terminator Genisys because there was already a lot of negative buzz about it before it was even released, and I already had so many other movies on my radar that I decided I would just skip it. And from what I've heard, it looks like I've made the right decision because that film only has, I think, a 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that might be the lowest rating for any Terminator film ever. I mean, I know a few people who like Terminator Genisys, but they're in like the distinct minority. And maybe it's because it's a nostalgic, maybe because it's a classic franchise, and maybe because Arnold Schwarzenegger came back to the franchise that it got nominated. I just hope it sincerely does not win over Star Wars, The Martian, or Mad Max Fury Road, because if it does, there's going to be a lot of complaining. But overall, I think the Saturn Awards have a very good list of nominees this year. Like any other award shows, there's a lot of notable snubs and films that shouldn't have been nominated, but overall I think there were a lot of great science fiction, fantasy, horror, thriller films in 2015, and hopefully the rest of 2016 will deliver the same. There's been some good this year, but some really, really bad. But I will be back soon with my next video in the series, which will highlight the special awards being given out at the Saturn Awards, and I will later present my video for the Saturn Award winners. So stay tuned for those, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!